Well, this is a fun tweet, so we'll do this one. All right. If you believe words are violence, take virtually everything literally, act like people don't have individual agency, see absence of information as proof of guilt, view reality as binary, that is to say, only two options, and don't understand humor, it's not others that need to change, it's you. You need to change. So, this tweet here covers a lot of bases. This is a popular tweet by my standards. We'll go down the list and talk about why it's not others that need to change, but you if you have these beliefs. And of course, this is my opinion. If you have any disagreements, please do leave a comment below with your thoughts and observations. I'm happy to debate, happy to correspond with you down there, or on Twitter, or Gab, Minds, Parler, Telegram, or even Instagram. If you believe words are violence, it's not others that need to change, it's you. So words are not violence. I know we've gotten into a lot of postmodern thinking lately, abstract thinking. And technically, you could say that words can be violent in terms of, if you're telling somebody to do something, hey, we have a shooting gallery here. I want you to shoot that person. I want you to shoot that person. Shoot, shoot, shoot. Yeah, ultimately, if the person follows through on that action, that request, then of course that is a violent word. That is, it's shoot, of course. And there's, of course, very piercing words. There's insults. There's things that we're offended by on a subjective, contextual basis. We are offended by them. There are piercing words. There are insults. There are negative words. There are all kinds of things that could be considered linguistic violence. So we don't need to go into the pedantics of saying, well, hey, this is a kind of violent word. You might as well be. It's like a sword you just threw into me. Of course, there is that reality to it. But in reality, though, words are just words. They're benign. They're on a page. They're coming out of your mouth. They're not an action. They are perhaps a precursor to an action, but they are not the action itself. And we need to learn, and they also, of course, as I talked about in our last tweet video, language evolves. So words that meant something, now, it means something now, or they meant something 5 or 10 or 20 years ago, it could mean something different in another 20 years. It could mean something totally different. And in fact, words that we consider taboo now in 20, 30 years could be completely acceptable. Even kindergartners may be saying them. So words are not violence. And I think that when people start to merge this idea that words are violence, and then they go out and they say, well, you said this, you happen to have this belief, or you appear to have this belief, and therefore I'm going to hit you. I might take a billy club, put on my black mask, not my N95 mask, but my black Antifa mask, and I'm going to hit you with a billy club because you're a racist, you're a bigot. Those words you might have used, I can't read your mind, but those words were like knives and needles in my heart. It was like a shotgun in the mouth. Those words, my God, you slayed me. So I'm going to hit you upside the head with a spiked billy club and smack you with some brass knuckles. Because words are violence, and therefore we can do a transfer from words to violence. That mentality is highly destructive and, frankly, in some ways, evil. Words are not violence. Words are words. And how seriously you take them, or I take them, or anybody, is up to us. It's up to us. We don't want to, we want to be polite. We want to be nice to other people and treat them as we would like to be treated. But there's a stark difference between saying something negative to somebody and actually committing an act of violence. So If you believe words are violence, it's not others that need to change, it's you. The next one is take virtually everything literally. If you take virtually everything literally, it's not others that need to change. So I do understand that some people, of course, have, in their heads, they have, I don't want to call it like neurotypical, neuroatypical, however you describe it. Definitely leave a comment below with more information on that. But people that have neurological, not necessarily disorders, but they might be neurologically divergent from other people, they might view, like I've certainly dealt with people that are very, very literal. So it could be something that's very baked in. Scott Adams actually has said, and he's at Scott Adams Says on Twitter, he's actually said that about 1/3 of people don't seem to have a sense of humor, because humor requires us to sort of think not so literally. It's more like figuratively and abstractly, because sometimes your plays on words, you have all, humor, of course, is subjective, but if, literalism can unwind humor. I think when I talk to people that are more literal, they actually enjoy the process of taking a joke that's a play on words and then unraveling it into into nonsense. But if you take virtually everything literally, it's a little hard to navigate because, well, people don't act perfectly literal. They don't act perfectly rational. We talk figuratively. We talk in, we use impressionistic language sometimes. So if you're very much about literalism, I say literalists are slowly eroding our society because people are taking things at their face value. They're taking words, saying that they're violent, saying that they're wrong in some way. But I think that if you take everything literally, it's just going to be a minefield for you because people are joking all the time and they're using all these different terms and they're using very sort of amorphous language. It's a minefield. So I would say, here's my bias coming in. I don't take everything literally, so I would say you want to err on the side of not taking everything literally. Some things, important things, mechanical things, like I say, the facts do matter. Even in a post-truth world, the facts matter to the outcomes. And so you want things to literally work. You want every 0 and 1 in a program to be in its right place. You want every screw and bolt on a machine, everything to be working, because our society runs on technology. We want science. We want exactism. We want science. But when you're talking, in terms of linguistic terms, taking things literally, there are diminishing returns. Everything literally. And I understand, again, if some people are not capable of thinking more impressionistically or figuratively, if they have some brain chemistry, I didn't have the right term before, but they have brain chemistry that prevents them from taking away some of that literalism. I understand that, and I'm not trying to judge, but virtually everything literally can be quite destructive, again, to society. If you act like people don't have individual agency, it's not others that need to change, it's you. So I do encounter this thing called third-person affect, which is an affect experience where people they assume that others don't have information. They assume ignorance in others. And they assume that people are easily molded and brainwashed and conditioned and programmed. No, that's largely true. We are always being brainwashed every minute of every day. But there's this third-person effect where, like, that person doesn't know what they're talking about. I know what they don't know. I know what they don't have in their head. And I think that they could be, I don't know, maybe there could be a pogrom, or there could be some stochastic, whatever how you say it, terrorism, or people could be led around by the Pied Piper to do things and hypnotized and persuaded to do things. They don't have their own agency. They're too impressionistic. They're too impressionable. They can't think for themselves, and they're easily led around. They don't have agency. They go by what the media says, what the government says, what Hollywood will tell them, what their friends tell them. They don't have any agency of their own. They're not individuals. They don't have merit or flaws. They shouldn't be judged by their character. They're just part of this group. They're not individuals. They're part of what that group does. May that group be mutable or immutable characteristics. May they be a certain race, sex, gender, or if it's something more mutable like a religion, an occupation, a hobby. They don't have the agency. They're just going by what everybody else does. Everything's moving around in groups. I think that is incorrect. That's a good way to put it. That's incorrect. Because individually, we are all doing our own thing. Individual agency is real. I talk about that in one of my new videos, Bumper Stuck. Check it out on BitChute and YouTube. But yeah, I don't like this idea that people are acting. Many of us are acting, according to the groups we are a part of, and many of us are acting in a hive mind mentality. It's true. It's true. There are a lot of people out there that actually have some issues with not being leaders and being more followers, and following the leader into some dicey territory. Okay, I understand that. Those people exist. But the automatic assumption, appealing to a third-person effect, the automatic assumption of ignorance, and that people don't have their own agency, it just kind of rattles my gears a little bit, if you know what I mean. So, it's not others that need to change, it's you. If you see absence of information as proof of guilt, it's not others that need to change, it's you. When you see absence of information as proof of guilt, what that means is that people, when we have an unknown, when we don't have all the information, we fill in that missing information cognitively, however we want to do it. We fill it in. We often fill it in with the worst case scenario. We fill it in with those stronger emotions like fear, panic, and all these things that are survivalistic. They've helped us to survive. Assuming the worst has helped humanity survive for all these hundreds of thousands of years as society and civilization grew. It's not bad stuff. It's not bad stuff. But when you see absence of information as a proof of something else, when you see if something's missing or if something's, I think we have a tendency, and I do too. We all do project a lot. We do. We'd have a tendency to say sometimes that absence of information is proof of guilt. Oh, you didn't say this, so obviously you would have said this. You would have been very clear. And I feel like this kind of ties into the media a little bit in terms of how reporters question everybody. If you say something, you have to. There's this assumption sometimes in some people that you have to say things absolutely clearly in a way that you remove all doubt, as if you need to remove doubt of something. And that sort of ties into this filling in the void thing. It's like, well, if you didn't say you don't like murdering babies, maybe you like to murder babies. That would be accepting the absence of information as proof of guilt. And frankly, a lot of people, again, I am pro-choice. I like murdering babies. Can we put it like that? I don't know. That might not be the most persuasive way to do that. I should talk to Robert Cialdini and see where I'm missing the mark on that one. But you get the point. When you see absence of information as proof of guilt, you're actually kind of not going with innocent until proven guilty. You're going guilty until proven innocent, which is the opposite of how actual productive, civilized, and advanced society should be. So continuing on here, If you view reality as binary, meaning only two options, it's not others that need to change, it's you. So reality isn't binary. It's not all about left and right, up and down, red and blue if you're into the US political scene. It's not all about black and white, one or zero. It's not binary. There are so many possibilities, millions really, every day. Some people believe in quantum physics. I do happen to believe in quantum mechanics and quantum physics, and talk about how there's always that question, that variability, that mystery box of Schrodinger's box. There aren't only two options. There are never only two. Like if you look at a binary continuum, like a spectrum, where it's like, well, you're either white or black. You're either yellow or green, however you like to put it. You're either a 1 or a 2. You're a 1 or a 0. I think thinking in absolutes is a fool's errand. So if you're thinking on one absolute end or the other, well, there's a chance you're probably thinking in a foolish manner, because we don't live in a world that's completely just binary. I think people have this belief in a philosophical concept called dualism. Definitely check with subject matter experts on more about that. Okay, do your research. But there are a lot of binaries, obviously. But the fact is, because there are so many binaries, so many options for us to look at, so many aspects to reality to navigate, when we start to go, well, you're either this or you're that, there are situations like that. It's contextual and subjective, but to always fall into, well, you have to be this or this. I say there are many millions of possibilities. There are so many ways we can look at things. When I say look at both sides, I don't mean both sides. I mean all sides. Every side of the equation should be looked at and observed and analyzed, and we should figure out, is that the right way to go for us? It shouldn't just be, I'm either going to have a sandwich or a soup today. I could have other things. I could have a salad. That's the third option. So obviously, when you're dealing with things, we all have vectors, we all have continuums, and there's a binary, there's a spectrum, there's everything kind of can break down to that micro decision, that 0 or a 1. At the end of the day, it really does kind of break down to that. But in the meantime, there's so many of those floating around, billions and trillions of them all the time, that I do believe in irrational free will. I believe that we have choice. I believe that we shouldn't be viewing things as either or all the time. There are conditions where we are better off thinking that way, but for the most part, it's better to think freely. I say, speak freely, think freely. And that's kind of what the United States of America is all about. So this final one here, if you don't understand humor, it's not others that need to change, it's you. So humor is subjective. I should say that again. I already said it earlier, but it bears repeating. Humor is subjective. So, what I find funny, you might not find funny. What you find funny, I might not find funny. Or we might find joy in the same thing. But I feel like, we talked about literalists, people that take virtually everything literally, and that kind of undermines their ability to understand humor. So I say, if you don't understand humor, it's not others that need to change, it's you. Because I think we should all, as human beings, we all have a sense of humor. It's not 2 out of 3 people have a sense of humor and 1 doesn't. Everybody in this world has their own brand and sense of humor. Even the most humorless person in the world has a sense of humor. It's just not as obvious, or they might not understand because of brain chemistry, because of people that are neuroatypical or however neurodivergent. they might not have the same perception of humor and perception of reality that others do, so they don't have the same labels and triggers in their head that help them identify they have pattern recognition to identify what humor is. Because I've talked about how humor, you can define it in so many ways, but sometimes I like to say it's just the off thing. You create an off, something that's exaggerated or the opposite of what should be. I think Scott Adams again has talked about this with the Dilbert strips, how you take a normal situation. This is how he talks about making Dilbert strips. You have a normal situation, and then you just flip one of the variables to the opposite of what it should be. They call this, and then you maybe even exaggerate. You can either do an exaggeration or you do a flip or both. And that alone, being able to see the other side of every coin actually helps with creating humor. But not everybody views reality the same way. We all have 7 billion perspectives on the world and our own window on reality. So, of course, humor is subjective. We all have our own ways, our own patterns that we see as normal, and our own patterns that we see as off or different that create this humor effect. So it's a little judgy. If you don't understand humor, it's not others that need to change, it's you. But there are some people out there that seriously don't get humor. And they seem to be killjoys whenever something funny happens. They want to take it too literally and use it as a bludgeon against other people. And when I see that, I just start to write tweets like this and make videos about them too. So it kind of works out.